Welcome to the Quaintrelle Podcast.
Meditation doesn't have to be sitting still and having an empty mind.
The journey is such a beautiful thing because we are all on a journey.
You want to make sure you have some kind of distribution plan, or at least have an idea of it, because you can make this really amazing film and it only gets seen by your family and friends.
Old Hollywood is still intact.
Every horse runs hard, but when they win, and they know it, they've got this little sass about them.
It was pretty rough. I had to go into the water and with my med pack, swim to the beach, treat these guys, put them on my back, swim out to the helo.
And I'm like, oh my God, I've never seen those before. And I said, what are those? And before I could even finish the sentence, she said, oh my God, you didn't touch them, did you?
Even if monarchs go away and we never see one again, because there never will be monarchs again if they die out, it is just a little indicator of larger threats. Humanity.
My dad said, so what were you guys doing in the desert? I said, we were taking nude photos.
Hey everyone, I hope you had a great week since the last time that we got together. I had such a fun week. It's been just a whirlwind of a lot of things. Earlier this week, or I guess last week now because it's Monday when this episode's going to come out, I got to spend some time with one of my dearest friends, Karen. We are avid hikers, and one of the things that we try to do is get together as often as possible to just walk on the beach. And we did that last week. We started out at the Redondo Beach Pier, and from there we walked southbound. Karen, I have to interrupt myself here to say that Karen is one of the most cutting edge fashionistas that I know. That girl always looks cute. Every single time that I see her, she's just absolutely gorgeous. And as much as I love getting together with her, that puts a little bit of pressure on you, right? Because you want to show up looking cute too. So I put on a cute pair of jeans, a crop top, and then a zipper front hand knitted sweater with a hood. And then I decided to put a little edge on it, right? So I have these Jack Purcell Converse. They're low tops and they're like this gray blue color. They're really super cute. But if you have a pair of Converse, or ever had a pair, you know that they are made from this really tough, durable canvas. And they will wear your heel raw. They're basketball court shoes, they're skater shoes. They're all kinds of things, but one thing that they are not is walking shoes. So, my mind was in looking cute, not being functional. And that's going to be my demise one of these days, I'm telling you. And so we start out at the Redondo Beach Pier. And if you're from the South Bay, this will be familiar to you. We started walking toward Hermosa Beach. And when we got to Pier Avenue, my heels are already starting to hurt. And I'm just kind of thinking I'm in trouble here because, we have to go back 2.5 miles to get to where we started. And Karen says, well, do you want to turn here or do you want to keep going? And as much as I wanted to keep going, I go, you know what? I think we should just turn here. I didn't want to tell her that my heels were killing me. So we turned, and with every step, my heel rubbed. And I tried to scrunch my toes so that my heels could move further away from the back of this shoe. And eventually, I just gave up. I just knew I was going to have a blister on the back of my heels. And I don't know if you've ever done that, but, it's funny because Karen and I hike a lot. We love going to different trails and we just have such a great time together. And so a few years ago, we hiked La Tuna Canyon, and I had a brand new pair of all-terrain shoes. I don't know that they were necessarily brand new, actually, to be honest. I had purchased them for another trip, But I decided to wear them on that hike up Latuna Canyon. And coming back down, I could just feel that heat and the friction. I'm walking down this hill, this mountain, really. And we've got probably 3 miles to go to get back down. I'm not really sure how far it was up, but we went to the very, very pinnacle of it. And it was great. We had lunch there. It was a glorious day. The red-tailed hawks that you see all over California were circling at eye level. The entire valley was clear. It was really beautiful. You could see all 3 airports, Glendale, Burbank, and LAX from there on that particular day. And coming down was really tough. And I got past that point of where I could feel there was an actual blister there. And I didn't have Band-Aids with me. So just a reminder, if you're going to go hiking, make sure you have some Band-Aids with you. You never know. And it could save your heel. So I didn't have any Band-Aids, but I did have some wax paper that I had wrapped my sandwich up in that we ate at the top. So I tore some of that wax paper off and shoved it between my shoe and my heel and kept on walking. It was terrible. And you can't do anything about it. You've got another 2 miles to go. And the only way to get off of this mountain and stop the torture is to just lean into it, right? Just resign yourself and you're not going to die. Like this shoe is not going to kill you. So it probably took about 2 months to heal up. And as we were returning to the pier, I thought, oh my God, this is going to be a repeat. The only person that has ever happened with is Karen. And both times I was wearing the wrong shoes. So not only should you carry Band-Aids with you when you're going to go on long walks, but you definitely should start out with the right shoes so that you can avoid having to even use the Band-Aids. So we made it back. And I was just like pretty miserable. And of course, the next day I woke up with like this giant blister on the back of one of my heels. And the other heel, of course, was totally messed up too. And you just want to cry because you've got to put shoes on again. And I was actually headed to an appointment with April McCarthy. If you want to listen to her amazing skincare tips, listen to episode 28. I was going to have a Morpheus treatment done. It's microneedling with electric currents that goes through it, and that stimulates the collagen production, and your skin looks fantastic. But, I raced around the house looking for shoes that I could wear that weren't going to kill my heels. And I got there and she came in as she always does. She's such a gem. I can't even tell you what treasure she is. She always comes in, she sits down, she starts talking, and we got to chatting, and I shared with her this damn blister that I had on the back of my heel. She goes, oh my gosh, you got to take care of that. And I'm like, no, absolutely not. I cannot take care of this because I faint. If this, I'm going to baby this blister and it's just going to have to go away on its own because I will faint. And she's like, what? And she got really concerned. We're in a medical setting. So she's got all this stuff right there that she could take care of it with. And she goes, can I take care of it for you? And I'm like, no, what if I faint in here? And she goes, what if you faint later on? And she's like, wouldn't you rather just be sitting on a table and not hurt yourself? Good point. You have not lived until you have to explain to your boss that you're late to work because of a blister. And it was one of the most thoughtful things to know that I couldn't deal with this thing because I would be in the middle of dealing with it and probably crack my forehead on the floor or on a counter or something. And to have somebody so kindly and gently and tenderly take care of me in just such a selfless way just blew me away. Like, it was so kind that it immediately instilled in me the need to pay that forward at some point to somebody else. I don't even know how I found such a great friend. It's pretty amazing. And then she told me that she's moving out of state like in the next couple of days. I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to do life without you? But I mean, the thing with friendships is if you build them right, you can withstand some distance. So I am looking forward to keeping up on social media until one or the other of us goes to each other's state and we get to hang out with each other again. Friendships are the balance, right? Like all the stuff that you can't do, all the stuff that you don't know, all the stuff that you've never thought about. That's what your friends are there for, to like make your life better. And that's exactly what you're there for them. There is nothing sweeter than a good friendship unless you're talking about honey. And that's exactly what we're going to get into in this episode, which is part 2 of my conversation with Alysa of Zou Beesou. Alysa is a honeybee educator. She's a master beekeeper, a mentor, a steward, an educator of honeybees, and she is a honey sommelier. And she was kind enough to stop by my house and drop off some pomegranate blossom honey that was delectable, luscious, caramelly, straw-colored, amazing flavor. We will get into all of those descriptives and more. How do you store honey? What do you do with it? Do the bees miss it? We had so much fun with the honey tasting and then talking about honeybees. So without further ado, please grab a cuppa and join Alysa of Zou Beesou in the company of friends talk. Enjoy.
So I recently got certified as a Honey Sommelier in Italy through their Italian register. Yeah, so Italy is the only country that has a standard for honey. Honey is one of the most adulterated products next to olive oil, and it's something that you don't really know that's adulterated unless you're testing it. So they created this program, and they have a standard for their varietals, meaning that they're looking for a specific moisture content, a certain flavor profile, aroma profile, certain things that they're looking for in their varietals to make sure that, keeping the market honest for consumers and as well keeping it competitive for beekeepers. So I took this course. It's a 3-part course. I finished the first part in December, and it was so incredibly fun. I learned how to taste this honey. So what we'll do is you have your honey. Is it handy?
It is handy. I've got a little jar here. I've got this lovely glass rod, which is the tasting stick. Is that what that is?
Yeah. So this honey is from my friend Evan at Bee Wild Collective. I really like his varietals. His hives are in Santa Barbara. I agree with the way he keeps his bees and just the reverence he holds for them. So I love to support him, and I love his honey.
That's beautiful.
So what we do when we are going to analyze this honey is we're first just going to look at it. So we'll look at the visual aspect of it. From there, we will go into the aroma. We will go into the taste and then the flavor. So taste and flavor are they're used interchangeably, although they're very different. So on our tongue, we can taste 5 different tastes: sweet, salty, bitter, umami, and sour. But when we have a flavor, we're actually discerning these different flavors through our nose. So it's kind of like through retronasal olfaction, meaning that we will eat something, we'll let it warm up in our mouth, and then that will travel up the pathway through our nose, and then we can really feel the full experience of it.
Wow, I'm so excited.
Yeah, so it's kind of like when you're sick or something, or you have allergies, different things that are happening in your life can affect your sense of smell and your sense of taste and flavor as well. Like if you have allergies or you're sick and your nose is stuffy, it's no fun to eat anything because you can't discern anything. It's just a texture. There's nothing to it. But then, as your nose clears, or even when you're pregnant, these can affect that part of your senses. So it's just kind of, using all of those together to figure out the different nuances. So let's start by just looking at the honey. Okay. So we would say, this honey is crystallized, which is a good thing. A good honey, a natural honey that hasn't been heated and hasn't had anything added to it will crystallize. So when you see crystallized honey, it's good. It's not a bad thing to ever see. This honey was harvested, I believe, in December. So just by looking at it, I would say the crystals are even, right? It's just kind of like a blob.
Yes.
And it looks really smooth. And the color of it, to me, it's hard to tell because it's not as light outside anymore, but it looks kind of like a butterscotch.
Yes, I would agree with that. I was going to describe that whole texture, the movement, the glossiness, the viscosity and everything, like maybe a little bit like a caramel or something.
Yeah, definitely. It is.
It's a lighter color. It's a little bit like somewhere in between butterscotch and maybe evaporated milk or something.
Oh yeah, I could see that. And then for me, it kind of like, I don't know if it's just the shape of my wine glass, but parts of it's definitely lighter around the edges than it is in the middle. It kind of reminds me of almost like an egg yolk.
Yeah, egg yolk is held together and it's got that strength to it.
Mm-hmm. So we can take our stir stick, and what we're going to do is we're going to just kind of stir it around the edges of the glass to kind of open up the aroma of it. So you're bringing it up the edges and just really get in there.
Just
kind of surrounds your nose. Yeah, smear it around so when you do stick your nose in, it can really surround your nose.
So for listeners, there's about 2 teaspoons at the bottom of my wine glass, and I'm just kind of spreading this very viscous, tacky, but glossy. I'm trying to think of, in terms of cooking, this would be like a softball state.
Mm-hmm.
You drop it in water and it's still going to be tacky. It's not going to turn into one of those hard crystals. I'm just kind of turning it into sunburst.
Yeah. Once you feel like you've kind of gotten it around the edges, stick your nose in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Not what you would expect, right?
There is definitely a butterscotchy, milky, floral.
Mm-hmm. I guess I should have talked a little bit about that aroma wheel. So we also have this aroma wheel in front of us that has 7 different categories on it. And when you're looking at your aroma wheel, honey can be any combination of these. Nothing is right. Nothing is wrong because it's different for everybody. What you smell today may be different than what you smell tomorrow. Same with what flavors you discern. It can change from day to day. And that's the fun part of it. But getting deep into the actual, yes, this is fruity, but what kind of fruit is it? Is it a citrus? Is it like a pith of the lime, or is it dried banana, or is it jam, which would also fall under the warm category because you kind of get this candied, malted, toasted flavor, or it can be like a toasted almond, or like you said, animal, that can, not animal, you said milk, that can kind of fall under animal, being a little lactic, and that doesn't make it bad. You can also have a chemical smell like a rubber or something, and that doesn't make it bad. That's just whatever they were foraging on that brings out these aromas and flavors. I kind of get like a little wet green. Like right now, if I were to go outside and smell the dirt or smell like a pile of leaves because it's been raining, that's kind of what it smells a little bit like to me. But I also get like this fresh smell, kind of like fresh hay.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
And then also I definitely get a tartness.
Do you get any floral scents? Smell a little bit of floral.
I do get a sweetness of some sort, but it kind of like, the smelling it triggers that feeling of like eating a Sour Patch Kid to me.
Oh, funny.
Yeah. Well, because that's also the fun part about doing this is that you may not even be able to be like, this smells like something. You can be like, oh, this smells like my grandma's house, and I would go there and she'd always give me a bag of Werther's, or this smells like when I would wake up for school first thing in the morning. So it could also trigger some kind of scent memory.
Yeah, I definitely smell wax.
Like a beeswax.
Yes. So honey itself, what is it? Does it have wax mixed into it naturally?
No, so they store it in the wax. And that's also something that can impart flavors into the honey and to the aroma as well, is the human interaction with it. So yes, you could definitely get the taste of wax, because it could, after the fact, have wax in it depending on how it was processed. If it was crushed, then it could get bits of pollen, bits of wax in it. But also you could get like a metallic taste if it was stored improperly. Like a lot of people like to store honey in a ball jar, and usually the twisty part of it will rust a little bit, and that can impart a different flavor, aroma, and even a different color to the honey. Everybody loves these little plastic bears that can change the flavor of it too, because it's plastic, it will leach. But then also those mass-produced bears or honey that goes into those bears could be imported and stored in like metal drums. Or, whoever harvests the honey could use too much smoke, and that can also impart the flavor on it too. Or the aroma is just like a smoky flavor. So there's different things that we can do to kind of like goof it up if we're not careful in our harvesting. But there's also like the natural compounds. Like now that you say wax, like yes, I definitely do get that fresh wax scent in there too.
Yeah. I think that might be the first thing and that might be why I kind of think milk a little bit, or that lactic scent. So this honey aroma wheel, and of course I will also put pictures up. The honey wheel has floral, fruity, warm, aromatic, vegetal, chemical, and animal scents. And then that's broken out into finer scents that are associated with those 7 categories. And I would say that everything within the warm area is what I'm primarily smelling when I smell this honey. And I'm wondering if a little bit of aromatic, the resinous, I guess that might be the wax that I'm smelling.
So when they say resinous here, it's more so like mentholy. It's more like camphorous or like a lavender type thing. But I think with the beeswax, that would probably fall more under, I don't know. I mean, you don't necessarily have to categorize that. This beeswax could be anything. It could be kind of vegetal in a way, because it's almost like a green type scent. But there's no right or wrong. That's the fun part, is that you don't have to categorize anything. And it could be as like, you can Google some honey wheels and they can be like crazy concise, but it's all a suggestion, because even though we have the ability to detect these different aromas and flavors, we can only really articulate so many of them, because it's all kind of learned. So it's like when I was first taking this class, I just felt my brain firing into nowhere. The first day I was like, oh my God, I'm so stupid. I don't know how to do this. It's not, I don't get it. And the teacher kept saying like, it's just fun. Just have fun. Like just quit trying to hone in on what it should be. You need to figure it out. And I was like, okay. And then as days went on, I was like, okay, I get it. Because you're training yourself and you're turning on that part of your brain. And then you're like, oh, then you start trying different things, like with doing this with like chocolate and wine and olive oil. Because, even the olives that you're making too. Yeah. It's so fun. It's really fun, because I feel like being present while eating is a lost art.
It is. I mean, there's so much that's fascinating about this. And then just even, I'm sitting here with this stir stick. It probably looks like I'm playing with my food.
Yeah.
It's something that we don't do, but I'm all of a sudden like, just feeling the texture and really getting to know this food that I've known since I was a little kid, but never really was mindful enough to this degree that it's like, whoa, let me learn a little bit more about this. It's very creamy.
Mm-hmm.
And a friend of mine gave me some avocado blossom honey for Christmas. And it was probably one of the first honeys that I've gotten that was very thick, like
like molasses.
This honey is as well. Very molassesy.
Very dark.
Yes. And I just assumed that it had been whipped or that there was a lot of wax content in there. So I just think it's really interesting how different honeys have different textures and have those different colors that you were just talking about.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming, because I'm going to, like, when we're done, I'm going to go grab that honey and grab another wine glass and do a little comparison here.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it probably has a completely different palette on this honey aroma wheel than this honey does.
Yeah, definitely. And it, there's also a grade in when we're learning about this. It's like, is the scent weak? Is it intense? Is it medium? And then when you taste it, does it linger? And things like that. So there's different ways about it, because you smell some honeys and it will just smack you in the face. And then you'll smell another and be like, it doesn't smell like anything. But and also a good way to reset your nose is to smell the back of your hand. And then you'll kind of reset, and then you can go and try to smell some more. But yeah, I mean, avocado blossom honey it's not a favorite for a lot of people. I like it. I think it's super intense. It's really dark and beautiful. It's very luscious. So I'm excited to see what you think of it.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to do a comparison now that we're talking about these two distinct honeys. How do you know that this honey all comes from pomegranates, or that honey all came from avocados, or another honey all came from, orange blossoms?
Well, I'm assuming that where his hives are, that's all there is for like a few miles. It could be a little bit of a mixture of something else, but a majority of it, I would assume, is pomegranate honey. But it could also, I could taste this next year, the next seasons, and it could taste slightly different, because no two harvests will ever be the same depending on the terrier of it. So, or what was happening that time of the year. If there was a lot of rain, what the pH level of the soil was, how the sun was, just different things in the environment will totally change the outcome of the honey. So it's when you buy one, that's the one. It may never be the same.
Right. I mean, it's kind of like wine. It's the same thing.
Yes.
So the environment is affecting the plants, the flowers that the bees are foraging, and all of these other elements, and whether the colony was happy for a majority of the time, or some shockwave went through it. All of that is going to affect it differently, because I'm assuming that pheromonal changes also affect the honey itself.
I never thought of that. I mean, that's definitely a good question. Because it is, you're right, because pheromones are chemicals, and they are released either through a scent or through a taste or something. So yeah, maybe that does affect it. I never thought about that. That's a good
hypothesis.
Yeah. I mean, also
we're going to have to look into it.
Because it makes me wonder, like, also where the communication could be happening within the hive. Like, there isn't necessarily as much communication happening on the honey than there is where the brood nest is, where most of the action is happening. So that makes me think, what is the radius that the pheromone can travel? And how long does that pheromone stay in the air? Is it just instantaneous? Is it like when we talk the word, once I say the word, that's it?
Right.
Yeah, those are really good questions. I will definitely look that up, and then I will get back to you on that.
All those things always fascinate me. And I think I read somewhere that a bee in her entire lifetime only creates like a couple of teaspoons of honey. Is that
a 12th
right?
of a teaspoon?
Oh,
and that's even and that's even in the last portion of her life. So she's spending a majority of her life inside of the hive. She's maybe only spending like maybe a week or two at the most outside of the hive foraging.
So when we see a bee out flying, that's the end of her life, basically.
Yeah, that's the end of her
last
life.
couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's
Wow.
pretty neat. So
that's stunning.
Should we taste this?
Yes.
All right.
So we're just grabbing a little bit. Is there any
Let's grab a
special
little bit.
way?
I like to let it kind of sit on my tongue or on the roof of my mouth and warm up a little bit.
Okay.
To let the flavor kind of open up. The taste you'll get kind of right away. And if you want, you can plug your nose and then release it, and the flavor will kind of burst forth through like retronasal olfaction.
Oh, wow.
Because of the way the flavor is traveling back up to your nose. This honey is by far my favorite. It's so special.
That's amazing. Is there a flavor wheel too?
No, it goes with it. The honey and the flavor wheel are the same.
Oh, okay.
So when I taste this one, I get kind of a little bit, I definitely get sour and tart, and I get a lot of sweet. This is the taste exactly like the Sour Patch Kid. We're tasting the pomegranate honey, and I feel like if this were to be a Sour Patch Kid, this is what it would taste like. It's just so good.
It's delicious. I am getting some of the chemically flavors too, but I'm not exactly sure what it is. But I do get the fruity. I get some of that, maybe a little bit of toasted, and some of the floral.
I get a little bit of mentholy at the beginning, kind of some spearmint type. Maybe that could be the medicine, the chemical type medicine you could be tasting. I also get kind of some thyme. So a little bit woody, a little bit kind of citrus. And then for me, it finishes really tart and just like a pomegranate.
Yeah, I'm getting that too. And that bitterness that you were talking about, and the citrusy, the bitter citrus.
Yeah. And I also get like a warm, fresh feeling in my mouth, which is not a temperature thing. It's a trigeminal nerve. That is a nerve in your mouth that will kind of like cause that. You know, when you have like an astringency, if you have like a red wine or like a black tea, and you kind of get that dried mouth.
The tannins.
Yeah. So that's from that nerve. And that can also create like a cooling sensation in your mouth, but not temperature, just that feeling like when you're chewing like gum, some kind of winter fresh.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Or like this, I get like a warming feeling in my mouth, which isn't the honey, but it's just that
nerve.
Yeah. Which right now at the end, it's like it's lingering tartness in the back of my cheeks. This honey is just so good.
That candy. That candy finish that it has is really pretty amazing. So special honeys like this, what is the best way to enjoy them? Like, you don't really want to bake with them, but you know, of course, like putting them on some fresh baked bread with a little bit of butter or something would be great too. But I don't know, like if you have a spectacular honey, what should you do with it?
I mean, don't save it.
Right.
You have to enjoy it. I mean, the shelf life of honey is really only like 2 to 3 years, because it will start to change. The volatiles in it will change as well. And that could, it will change the taste, and it's a gift. You want to you don't want to hoard it. You want to save it. I hosted a tasting over the weekend. One of our honeys was a sage blossom honey, and we also did chocolate as well. So we had this Ecuador chocolate that was really earthy. We paired it with some blue cheese, and then we put some sage blossom honey on it.
Oh my God.
Yeah. That charcuterie that's probably my favorite way to enjoy honey, because I feel like as you pair it with different things, it brings it alive and changes it, and it can highlight, depending on what it is, it could highlight more of the tartness, or it could highlight more of the earthiness of it, just depending on what you have it with. I feel like this would be really good with like a goat's cheese. I feel like we just had this really good French goat cheese. It was the cutest, softest little medallion. I mean, I'll have to find the name of it, but I feel like a good cheese with some honey or even a date with some different kind of honey.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes even chicken could be good.
You know what I really like about this too? This complete focus on the honey and the way that we're talking about it is that normally honey is just an accompaniment, right? It's just something.
It's never the star.
It's never the star. And we're talking about, we've got this star right here. What are these other foods that generally serve as the star ingredients of a charcuterie board or anything else? Which one of those will highlight this or, be acceptable to be paired with this star? So I like that idea. And I guess that's what all the tasting is about, right?
Yeah, it's fun. Like I would even try this on a manchego. I think it'd be really good with the manchego.
Oh, yeah. Manchego. So that probably has, to me, it's got that almost like a sizzly sensation for a moment. So that's probably that trigeminal nerve that I had no idea that that's what that was. I was always like, God, that's a little sizzly.
I like that description though.
Now I know what it is. This would be really good with the manchego. I could see that. Wow, that's super delicious. You mentioned the shelf life is 2 to 3 years. These archaeologists have gone into ancient sites and, come out of pyramids and said, there was this honey that was buried with a king centuries ago and it's crystallized and it's perfectly good. So it really isn't.
Well, it won't
I'm sure
good.
that it would still be edible, right?
I mean, it definitely won't taste very good. So honey is like naturally antibacterial and antimicrobial. So mold and stuff can grow on it, but it won't grow in it or through it. So I don't know. I've read contradictory things to it about that. I probably don't think it would taste very good, but it's probably edible.
Yeah, at this point, like, what's the point, right?
Yeah. Maybe just for clout.
Right. Just to say that you tried it.
Yeah, to say you did it.
So the other thing was that you mentioned the crystallization of this honey and that being a good thing. So I've had honeys sitting on the shelf that were liquidy, and then after a while they completely crystallized and I had to get the butter knife to get in there to get them out. And I've heard that you could put honey in the microwave and that'll soften it back up. What's the best way to keep honey once it crystallizes? Is that a problem? Is there a way to prevent that from happening? Is microwaving it not a good idea?
Definitely don't microwave it. Crystallization is natural. It's a natural process of the honey because it's a combination of glucose, fructose, and sucrose. So different combinations of each sugar will result in the crystallizations at different rates. So like this pomegranate honey crystallized really fast, mostly because it was so cold after he harvested it. So some people don't like crystallized honey and they want it, liquid. So some companies will heat their honeys to make sure that it never crystallizes, but that breaks down a lot of the chemical compounds in it, making it not as nutritious as you would want it to be. So when you do see honey that's crystallized, it's never a bad sign. But if you want to make it liquid again, I would make it bain marie, Don't ever add water to it because then it will just ferment. Then you can put it in some warm water and that will kind of warm it up a little bit to break down those crystals.
And that fermentation, will it turn into like an alcohol or something?
Yeah, it just won't be good. So honey the bees will dehydrate it down to like 18%. Depending on what kind of honey it is, there's a range, but usually it's generally around 18%. Honeys with a lower moisture content will crystallize faster than honeys with a higher moisture content. But the bees, I don't know how they know, but they know like, oh, this is right. This is ready to go. Let's cap it and seal it. And then that's that. But if sometimes, this was a big problem with honey that's being imported is that it was either the moisture content of it was too high, so it was harvested too early, which resulted in it fermenting, being kind of bubbly, smelling like yeast, and then having an off taste to it. But there was also corn syrup was added to it, rice syrup, just different things have been added to honey and then sold as honey, but without the consumer knowing it.
What's the percentage of honeys that are out there that are adulterated, or what is the best way for a consumer to be sure that they're getting unadulterated honey?
Buy from your local farmer's market and your beekeeper. I know it's hard. People are like, oh, has this, has that. I don't know. It's hard to say because you don't know, because there is no standard for honey for really much of our food. Unfortunately, right. It's a consumer beware.
And it's not always listed when it's adulterated.
No,
those ingredients.
It's not. It's 100% not. People will say grade A honey. There's no grade. Pure raw honey. It's like, well, of course it's pure and it's raw, but those are just, it's greenwashing, it's just words added that people will gravitate to because they think that it's better. I would say go to the farmer's market, and it's like, you're also supporting your local community, and you can talk to your beekeeper and ask them, like, if you're curious, like, what are your practices? Do you heat your honey? Things like that.
What about, I know that they've got like the creamed honeys that are whipped, or honeycomb versus regular honey.
Mm-hmm. So honeycomb is definitely one of the least adulterated honeys you could buy, because you can't really fake that, because you're just basically taking it straight from the hive and cutting it up, packaging it, and selling it. You can eat the wax when you have a honeycomb like that. You chew it a lot. It's like chewing gum. You spit it out, or you can just eat it as is. That's always a fun way to have honey too. Whipped honey or creamed honey, you have to have like a seed, kind of like a starter for it. So with that, you're actually definitely warming your honey even more, because you're mixing it. You put this seed in it and you're adding air, and you're just whipping it with this seed, and it changes the molecular structure of the honey to make it a creamed honey. Which is funny, because like they talked about that in Italy, and how like to the honey sommeliers, they were like, no, because it's, you're kind of a purist. Like, no, I just want honey just exactly how it is.
Right.
But to the consumer, they love it because it's a texture, and the texture of it is just, it's light and it's airy and it's spreadable.
Yeah, but it goes through some processing to get there. So it's no longer a pure product.
Yes and no. Like, it is still, you're not adding anything that's not honey to it, but you're not going to have that for the nutritional content. You're just going to have it for the mouthfeel.
I've just been, every time that you talk, I've been trying this honey and falling more and more in love with it.
Isn't it?
It is
good?
really wonderful.
It's so good. Like, I tried this and I was like, oh my God. And then I talked to him a few days later. I was like, do you have any more? I should have gotten a bigger jar. and he's like, no, I sold out. Like, I saw them like hotcakes. And I was like, I can see why, because this is incredible.
Wow.
It's fun. It makes me really happy.
It's delicious. Do the bees miss the honey when you collect it, or do they miss the honeycomb when it's taken away?
So to build that comb, which is what the entire hive is made out of, it takes like 7 pounds of nectar in order to create 1 pound of wax. So during a certain phase of her life, the worker bee will be a wax maker. So her abdomens are developed. She's at this age, the organs in her abdomens are fully developed enough to produce this wax. So like you said, when you saw in that office, you saw like that string of bees, and they were kind of holding each other's legs and arms together. So that's called festooning. Scientists aren't quite sure the exact reason why bees do that. Some think it's to help them build like a scaffolding for building wax.
Oh.
She will secrete this wax from her abdomen, pass it back and forth between her mouth and her legs, getting it to the right consistency to build all this wax. So it's energy that's going into it when you do take honeycomb, because you're taking the comb that they made and you're just taking it out, and then they have to rebuild it. People keep bees for various reasons. Bees need honey. That's how the adult bees survive. That's their source of carbohydrates. That's what they need to eat on days like this when it's rainy and when it's cold. That's just, they're in the box eating. So you ideally leave enough honey for your bees to have, and you take what's extra. So what's extra is, they say, like during the winter months when it's cold, depending on how long your winter is, they say like, maybe 60 pounds of honey to be left on your hive. But some people will take honey and then they'll just feed their bees sugar syrup. It depends on what their MO is, so that's also a hard thing that I have with honey. That's why I don't keep bees for honey. If we do have extra honey in our hives, I give it to my clients. And even then, they don't really get a lot of honey. It depends on the season and how the season was. We can't guarantee honey unless the conditions allow for it. Like, I think we may have a pretty good honey harvest during the springtime because of all the rain we've been getting. Whereas last year we had a really terrible harvest because it was so dry. So it depends. So they probably do miss it to an extent.
Yeah, I've always wondered. And I don't know, I was just thinking about, like, I went outside earlier today and I picked a little wildflower bouquet from my yard because there is, like you said, so much food out there for the bees that I felt like I can grab some of these. So I've got a bunch of nasturtiums and I threw some of the dandelions in there because I have so many dandelions out there, and lavender and jasmine and all of that. So if I had a bee, well, I would need a colony. If I had a colony that was foraging off of all of these different flowers, would you be able to tell that it's a mixed variety? And are there inferior flowers, like some flowers that just make horrible tasting honey? Is there such a thing as that?
Yes, I think it's all a matter of opinion, right? So I started beekeeping in Oklahoma initially. And my mentor was telling me, he's like, nobody likes goldenrod honey. It's usually the fall harvest and everybody hates it. And I just started laughing. Come? And he said it just has a particular smell to it. And it has it's a little pungent, and there's just something about it that people don't like. Some people love it. Some people don't like it. So in terms of that for a flavor or aroma profile, yeah, there's some that aren't as likable as others. Like when I taught a 4-H class and I brought some honey for the kids to taste, and one of them was avocado honey, and those kids hated it. They were just like, why did you bring this? And I'm just like, because you can see that they're all different. And I mean, especially when you look at avocado honey, you're like, wow, it looks just like blackstrap molasses,
Right.
It's so thick and it's so dark and oily looking. I love it. But, those kids hated it.
I think their young palates have not developed enough, because most kids are like, blue cheese, are you out of your mind? Yeah. Do not put this on my plate, And then we get older and we're like, bring on the blue cheese.
Yeah.
I want it on top of my salad. Lots of it.
Yeah, totally.
So I think it's kind of something that you eventually develop a taste for.
Well, it's like drinking bourbon and whiskey. Like your first alcohol, you're like, I want fuzzy navel.
Right. What's the sweetest thing on the menu? Give me that. Now I'm just kind of like gin and tonic, or whatever the least sweet item is. So yeah, it's that sort of a thing. That is so funny. I'd love to hear what they have to say when they get older. I tried this and I was a little kid and I hated it, and now it's amazing.
So you had talked about if you have a wildflower honey, if you can kind of pick out different flowers in it. And it's definitely can. So remember in my class, they had mixed 2 honeys. And they were like, tell us what they are. And I was like, what? I mean, because with them, they're master sommeliers. And we are just we're like kindergartners. So it was just so amazing listening to them. I was just in awe. I'm like, your palate is just phenomenal. How? And just, being able to articulate everything. And I know it comes with time, But yeah, eventually you can, like, so Evan had given me a citrus honey. And I was like, what's in it? And he's like, well, it's a little bit of grapefruit, tangerine, some lemons, and he gave me some other things. And I just assumed this is probably all the citrus family. And I tasted it and I was like, oh, I really taste orange blossom in this. Maybe a majority of what they foraged on in that orchard was orange blossom, because that came through really strong for me.
Wow. And orange blossoms have the headiest, most amazing scent. And that comes through in the flavor as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, so the orange blossom is actually one of my least favorite honeys.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, I just don't, that and like chestnut honey. I just don't like them very much. Orange blossom honey to me didn't really smell as much. Maybe it's also just the orange blossom honey from where it came from, because it will taste different here than it would in Florida.
Oh.
Because, you know, the weather is totally different and just the conditions are just like night and day. So you could get something from somewhere else, same type of varietal, but totally different flavor profile and aroma. But to me, orange blossom is really earthy and vegetal and like kind of like some sweaty socks. And I but I think if I were to mix it with something, maybe like a date to add in some sweetness, and then like a nice, maybe even a blue cheese stuck in there with some orange blossom, like that could be really good on it, just to like make it a little more enjoyable for me. But on its own, I don't like it.
Oh, that is so funny. And, you know, when you said mixing something in at the date or something else, is it ever acceptable to add something to it? Like, I was just thinking, wow, what would a little bit of smoke taste like in here?
Like to infuse it?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, people do it all the time. I'm kind of a purist because I feel like honey on its own is so special because it's never the same. It just takes you on this like flavor adventure. Or not even a flavor adventure. It's like aroma too. It's just like the sensory adventure that you're going on. But it's funny. I had a girlfriend the other day. He's like, well, I love this jalapeno honey. And I was like, and that's good. You should love your honey, your jalapeno honey, because that's what makes you happy. It's also a good way to take a really terrible honey and make it good because you're infusing it with something.
That's true.
But I think this would be really good, kind of smoky. Maybe if you like lined the rim of a glass and kind of put in like a little smoky bourbon in it, that could be good. Oh. Or if like you make
that might be my drink tonight.
Yeah, or like some honeyed ice cubes or something, that could be good.
Oh, that would be really good. Yeah, I know. I'm like, this is a small jar, but it's got some big plans ahead of it. You know, like, I'm going to try to make all of this stuff we're talking about and maybe a little bit more.
Just stretch it.
Just stretch it. Oh my gosh, this is really amazing. I know that you have the Honey Sommelier. And what other services do you provide? What's the name of your company? How can people get a hold of you?
So my company is called Zou Beesou. I don't know if you remember Mad Men, and one of Don Draper's wives sang this song, Zou Beesou, Beesou, and it was just kind of about like the art of kissing and how it's fun and sensual and soft. And I loved the sound of that, and I thought it was a fun play on words to add. And, you know, Bisou is kiss in French, but instead of B-I-S-O-U, to make it B-E-E-S-O-U.
Yeah.
So the name of my company is Zou Beesou, and my general focus is on education, being that bridge between bees and the public on what we can do to help and how we can be good stewards to our land and to nature. And I do hive placements if people want beehives in their backyard. And I also mentor beekeepers as well, new beekeepers that are starting out. I love to teach classes. And I think you had found me through Career Day, and that the youth is definitely my favorite to work with. So I love presenting to 4-H clubs and career days and stuff like that, because I feel like their minds are just so inquisitive and so fun. Yeah, and I also provide my services to other beekeepers in working with them to do flavor profiles. I also do site visits and help people kind of figure out how they can streamline what they're doing, or also if there's something wrong with their hive to help them diagnose it. I am a Master Beekeeper through Cornell University, so it's really fun to kind of mix the art and the science behind it all together and just be as best of a beekeeper as I could be.
Yeah, just make something really beautiful out of
Yeah, and it's so rewarding because it's bees. It brings everybody together regardless of what their thoughts are on anything, and it's a good neutral thing that everybody loves.
I mean, literally brings everybody together, because every time you sit down for a meal, there was a bee behind that meal.
Yep, some kind of pollinator.
Yeah, we wouldn't have a lot without them. One of the things that I thought was really interesting that you do, and, which is what we just finished doing, was the Honey Sommelier. Is there a place, if people want to experience that, what would they need to do?
You can email me through my website. I do in-home tastings as well. Sometimes I'll partner with certain people. I partnered with a chocolate maker, Bar au Chocolat, this past weekend, and we hosted a tasting at her chocolate studio. So for me, I'm more of a traveling taster. Okay. If people have a space they'd like to host something at, I'm more than happy to come. Backyards, corporate events, really anything. I am working on trying to get my own space. My sister has graciously opened up her backyard to me
that's so nice.
To host. But really anywhere, it's because you don't need much. You just need some wine glasses, palette cleanser, and piece of paper. It's a really fun thing to kind of just do on a whim too. I've done a few girls' nights where we just kind of sit around and taste honey together and talk about it. My website is probably the best place to reach me, because you can email me there, ZouBeesou.com. You can also find me on Instagram. My Instagram link is through my website as well. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been such a joy and a treat to talk to you and get to know you over email. I hope we can be friends and hang out after this too.
Definitely. As soon as my olives are ready, I sure hope that they turn out. Definitely going to be sending you at least one jar. I don't know how many I'm going to get, but you will definitely get to taste some, and hopefully you like them.
Thank you.
Gosh, I cannot tell you how much fun it was to do that honey tasting and spend time with Alysa. I, for one, vote on bringing back the lost childhood art of playing with food and being fully present to its textures and scents and flavors and attributes. Please also be sure to buy local honey, support your farmers market and your local beekeepers, and try all of those amazing varieties of beautiful blossom goodness so that you can make honey the star on a charcuterie board, or do what I do, which is one of my favorite things. There is no better canvas than a perfectly toasted piece of bread to showcase that amazing honey. And above all, stay sweet. Check out the show notes, and please take a moment to rate this episode, because your ratings really do help move this podcast closer to the top of searches so that my friends and I can reach more people. I'm looking forward to sharing more upcoming In the Company of Friends talks with you. So be sure to follow me on the socials and the .com, all at the Quaintrelle Podcast. That's TheQuaintrelle Podcast. I am Sil Annan, the Quaintrelle, and until next time, I wish you passion, grace, sweet honeybees in your garden, wonderful moments, good friends, elegance, and beauty.